Well, it all starts in the legislative branch, where the House of Representatives and the Senate reside, both in Connecticut and in Washington, D.C. They're the ones that actually pass laws. No one else can pass them, not the judiciary, where the judges are, and not the executive branch, where the president or the governor is. The State Board of Education is part of the executive branch. That's where they have to implement or put into action the bills that are passed in the legislative branch. And the judiciary is where the laws are enforced. You have to abide by the laws there. They adjudicate the judiciary. So, some students, when I was appointed, by the way, I was appointed by a governor to serve on the State Board of Education, because that's the executive branch. And it's like the local Board of Education, only it's for all the school children in the state of Connecticut. And some of the school children from a high school came and said, you know, we would like to also be represented on the State Board of Education, not just adults, but we're the students, and all the implementation of these laws affect us as students. Well, in order to pass that law, we couldn't do it on the State Board of Education, and I didn't realize I was going to someday serve in the legislative branch, in the House and in the Senate, but that law, in order for it to be passed so a student could actually serve, had to go through the legislative bill passing process. And it starts by someone suggesting a law. It could be a student, it could be an adult, it could be a state department, like the Department of Education, it could be a governor, it could be just a citizen or an advocacy group. So it would have to first start in the legislative branch, which is the Education Committee of the legislature. And the people on there are both senators and representatives. And the bill would be proposed, and the leadership of that committee would decide, do we want to actually hear this bill? And if we do, then it legally has to have a public hearing. Now, a public hearing is when you tell the public, we're going to be voting on this bill. And today we're going to have, we want to see if the public agrees with it. The public has to have an opportunity to come and testify. Now, maybe that day there's a bill that says, well, we want school to be all year long, not just 180 days, but we want school to be all 12 months. And then we also have this suggestion that we should put a student on the State Board of Education. So the leadership says, well, which of these bills do we want to hear from the public? And it was decided by the leadership that maybe they would rather, instead of making you go to school all year long, they'd like to see if the public agrees with the concept of a student representative. So the public's invited to testify. A lot of people came to testify. A lot of students came to testify. And then when that period of public hearing is over, then the leadership meets again and says, well, which bills do we want to bring forward? And if we do, then every committee member has to vote it yes or no. If it gets more yeses than nos, then the bill is traveling from the Education Committee to the House and Senate of the legislature, where there they have to put it on a calendar and an agenda and decide whether they want to vote on it. If they do, it has to be voted on both the House and the Senate, and if they both chambers decide yes, then it goes to the governor to sign the bill yes or no. They can decide no. If it does it end there? No. Because the House and Senate can say, well, we disagree with you, Governor. We really want a student on the Board of Education. And the only way they can overturn the governor's decision is that they have to pass it by a larger number, 2/3 of the chamber. That's called an override of a governor's veto. If they agree, they just sign it and it becomes law, and before you know it, the Department of Education then has the ability to actually choose someone to run. So a bill becoming law has a long, long journey to travel before it actually passes.
Wow, well, thank you. Okay, gosh, so guys get ready, because that is exactly what our representatives and our senators are doing. That's what they're busy doing, is deciding on bills into law. Mr. Marconi, can I hand it over to you now to ask the panel their questions, and hopefully the panel will also answer some of the questions that you guys had. I don't think this is working, so I think we're holding this mic today.
Okay.
Oh, is it working? Oh, okay. No,
Yeah, you can all hear me?
Yeah, we don't want enough feedback, so I'll grab that. Yeah. Oh, okay, that's a good idea.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Did you enjoy the, good afternoon, everyone. There you go, wake up. Did you start late today in school?
No.
You had no school?
No
Boy, I'm gonna ask to have a voice in that because you should have been in school today.
I agree.
You agree?
I love school.
Okay. So what we're gonna do, I know, later on you'll appreciate it, believe me. So what we're doing today, heads up, everybody pay attention. What we're gonna do today is, I'm gonna ask each panelist 3 questions. And if they can go through it quickly, then we can give it to you to ask your questions, okay? Does it sound like a plan? Do you approve?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So the first question to the panelists is, why did you choose to run or apply for a state leadership position? And we'll start with Ms. Berger Gervalo.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for having me here tonight. I've been very excited about your program from the first time that it was introduced to me, and it's so cool to see so many of you out here. I apologize for a little bit of the hoarseness. I chose to run because I was involved. I was really spending a lot of time with a lot of people who were very passionate about getting things done and making changes. And I was involved before the presidential election that got a lot of attention 2 years ago. I was involved with gun violence prevention and working with community members toward fixing and improving some of the laws there. And then once I started to be engaged with more and more people, and we took hundreds of people down to Washington, D.C., and we got people to New York and to Hartford, all to let our voices be heard, and we were doing that together. And then we sat down as I became a member of the Democratic Town Committee and said, okay, well, we need to find someone who's going to challenge our current leadership. Who's that going to be? And I sat down and I said, okay, let's make a list of all the things that that person needs to be. And everybody in the room started laughing and pointing at me. And that's when I started to really consider that maybe I could do something, because before that I didn't believe, I didn't have the faith in myself to do it. But that changed very quickly thanks to all the people that I was around. And that's really how my journey started as a candidate.
Thank you, Amy. Tara?
So I was following our local Board of Education's budget proposal for this school year, and I found that one of their details would result in a lot of English teachers at the high school being laid off because we didn't have the funds to support their salaries. So at first I was like, okay, like I don't get how this affects me. Like I'm gonna be a senior, I don't care. And then I was talking to one of my English teachers, and she was like, actually, you should care, because your English conferences, when you go over your essay, like with your teacher one-on-one, would not happen anymore, because teachers would have to teach more classes, so they wouldn't have free periods to meet with students individually and help them improve and like learn how to write, which is really important for any discipline or like any subject you study in. So a group of my friends and I decided that we would start writing letters to the Richfield Press about why this is really important, because a lot of elementary and middle schoolers don't have these conferences, and it really only starts once you're in high school. So we wrote to the Richfield Press, and then I actually sent my letter to the local Board of Education and received some responses back saying like, thank you for this information, we didn't think of this before, like we didn't know that this would be one of the major implications. And then we also spoke to the local Board of Education during one of their meetings and really like hammered it down that this is a really important thing for all students to have. And then they revised that part of the budget proposal so that English teachers wouldn't have to get laid off, which is really great for all of you, because you guys will all get to meet with your English teachers when you're in high school to go over your writing and become excellent writers. But after it, I was really confused, because I was like, I wanted to do more, because not all schools in Connecticut have these programs that I have here. Like we have a lot of after-school sports and extracurriculars that are funded by our schools, but other schools across the state don't have it. So one of our previous mentors, I don't know if you know her or remember her, Ananya, she told me that there was leadership positions on the State Board of Education that you can apply for. So I applied for it on a whim, not thinking I would get it, because I wasn't on our local Board of Education and most of the students on it had been on theirs. But I was really happy when I got it, because now I can advocate for like education equality across the state.
Do we have student reps on our local Board of Education?
You don't get to run for the position.
Okay.
It's, no, it's not even appointed. It's your high school student body president automatically
Right.
gets the position, rather than someone being able to run for it.
Thank you. Tony?
Isn't that impressive? Isn't it? It's wonderful. Well, I actually didn't choose to run for a state representative position, or even my local Board of Education. I was asked to by some other people. I didn't realize I could do that. But I tell you why I said yes, I would run for my local Board of Education, because I didn't think anything further would ever happen to me with regards to running for office. And the reason that I said yes is because I came to Connecticut when I was only 5 years old from a little farm in Italy, and we didn't have an education there. We didn't have any money. We couldn't speak a word of English. My dad only had a 5th grade education, so he never got any further than where you are. And my mother, sadly, didn't have 1 day of school. So to write her name, she had to put like just an X in a box. And it really bothered her so much. But she was probably the smartest person in our family. And we came to Connecticut because my uncles were farmers, and they helped us to leave the small farm where we were, and we went to the city in Connecticut, where is a big factory where my dad could get a job. And he worked very, very, very hard. In fact, 3 jobs every single day until Sundays. Sundays were for family. And what he said to us, and it's one of my favorite quotes, I get to say the other one later, but he always said to us every day, education is everything. It's the way out of poverty. It's the path to freedom. And boy, was he right. My brother was very, very, very smart and became an astrophysicist, a rocket scientist, and I did really well too. So we got the education my dad dreamed of. And when they said, would you run for the Board of Education? Well, that was the magic word, was education. And I wasn't in a political party. I didn't grow up as a Democrat or Republican. In fact, I didn't know too much about those political parties, but the position was a Republican position, and so they had me sign up for it, and I could run. And that led to being asked to be on the Board of Selectmen, and then be appointed to the State Board of Education, and being asked to run for a state rep, and then being asked even to run by the previous state senator to run for this position. The only time I actually said and ventured was, I think Rudy and I both did that, we explored a possible run for governor. And so it has been a great journey, but for me, the thing that inspired me was education. For kids like us that didn't have an education, couldn't speak any English, and came from a poor background, you're all very lucky. You should thank your parents every day that they've given you such a great opportunity.
Thank you, Tony. You can keep the mic. This work does work. The second question we had, and I want to thank Senator Boucher, because when she says she got involved because of education and wanted to focus on education, she was a leader at the state on education and protected a lot of what you're able to enjoy now in our school systems, not only for the regular curriculum, but also for special ed. She was a huge advocate for special ed, and I want to thank you for what you did and continue to do. So the second question. Okay.
Turn up the projector so we can see better.
Okay. We're good to go. I got it all clear. What was your experience like in the middle school and high school, and how did that lead you to where you are today? What was your experience, and did you foresee yourself actually doing this today?
When I was in middle school, I was absolutely 100% certain that I was going to become a rock star. I didn't really have much in the way of political ambitions. I was always very active and involved and an advocate for other people, and I was going down to Washington, D.C. for marches and things like that. And then I did actually run for and win student council all 3 years, but still never saw myself politically. I really saw myself on stage with spotlight and writing songs.
So how did you end up running for office? Did you think about it when you were in middle school, high school?
I really didn't. I
You
didn't.
follow it at
I
all?
didn't think it wasn't even something that occurred to me, because it wasn't something that girls talked about much.
And you're talking about it here, right, today? Am I correct, girls?
Yeah.
And why do you think we're talking about it today? Why are you here? bring more awareness, but to give you the understanding that you can become an elected official. And you can start thinking about that today. And you've heard this many times, we need more women in government. You have a great mind, you have great voices, and you need to be brave and be able to stand up and tell everybody what you think, because we want to hear from you. So, Tara, what got you to this position? And what was your experience like in middle and high school?
Yeah, so I'm currently a senior in high school, so I'm still living the high school experience. But in middle school, I wasn't politically knowledgeable at all. Like, I didn't know what the 3 branches of government were until like 7th grade, when I had to learn them. And my parents kept telling me, like, you got to start reading the news. Like, you have so many opinions, but you have no evidence to back it up. So I started reading the news, and I started reading Connecticut news and realized that there was a lot of inequality in education in our state. And I was thinking, like, I have this great school system, but other kids don't. And then I was actually at a debate tournament when the result was actually, should state courts decide how education funding is distributed? And it was following a Connecticut Supreme Court case about the issue and education inequality and how the state legislature was allocating funds to different school districts. So in about an hour, I was given like a crash course on how the Connecticut education system worked. And I started getting really interested in the topic and following what the court case was about. And then my experience last year as I was a junior in high school and advocating on the local board of education led me to realize that I can make a difference and that student voices are incredibly important, especially with education, because laws are made, but we're the ones who have to deal with the consequences, and we see the actual impacts of those laws because we're the students. So I decided 2 weeks before the deadline for this application that I was gonna run for it and be one of the people that they could consider, because a fellow mentor at Miss President US was like telling me about it. She's like, you need to do it. Like, I don't care if you haven't had experience on your local board of education. Like, I believe in you. Like, you know how to like speak publicly because you do debate, and you should just go for it. Like, you have nothing to lose here. And that was true. I had literally nothing to lose. It was like an essay I had to write for it. So I did it, and it worked out pretty well. And I encourage you all to really follow through with your passions. Like, if you're passionate about something, find a way to make your voice heard and do something about it, because your life will have so much more meaning when you're able to do that.
Boy, aren't we lucky to have her on
Yeah,
the
we
State
are.
Board of Education.
And Tony, I
Richfield.
remember last year you talking about how you came up through the middle school and high school and how you weren't the person you are today. I think the girls would
Not
be
at
very
all.
interested in that.
Oh my goodness, well, you heard me tell you that when I came here, I was only 5 years old and I couldn't speak any English. Well, they didn't have things that we have today to help people that don't speak English and come from another country. They didn't have English as a second language or bilingual. So when you came from somewhere else, especially if you're very poor, they just stuck you in the back of the classroom. And it was very embarrassing, and you couldn't, I used to tell my mom, I try to speak to them, but they don't understand what I'm saying. And there were many, many, many nights when I went to bed crying. It was really, really hard. And actually, I ran into a classmate not long ago who knew me in 3rd grade, and I still couldn't speak English. It took until the 4th grade. So as a result of that, I was very quiet, I was very shy, I was embarrassed, I was a wallflower, and especially in middle school, oh my gosh. I didn't hardly say a word. And what happened was, a teacher in 6th grade made me write over and over again. She made me even cry because it was so hard for me to write. But she knew that if I kept doing it, I would certainly get it at some point. And now I love to write. In fact, I write too much, right, Rudy? And then what happened was, what's wonderful about this panel is your work in debate. Okay, I didn't know what a debate team was, but I had an English teacher at the high school. Again, I was really quiet. But he said, you know, you should be on the debate team. And they were all boys. There were no girls on the debate team at all. And it was the most terrifying experience ever. I got up and I I didn't know what to say, I was not articulate, but they made you study the issues like you studied it so well, and both sides of an issue. And he just kept making me do it again and again and again. You know what you find? If you sometimes repeat and practice over and over, like in sports, or in music, or in any field, if you keep doing it over and over again, sooner or later, something clicks and you get it, and you do better at it. And that's what actually changed my life. It made me be more proactive. I could speak in front of people. Now it doesn't bother me, but it did. And people say, right, that public speaking is the most feared thing of anything that you could possibly do. So my advice is make sure you get up and just like you speak, take every opportunity, even if it's embarrassing, even if you're scared. And by the way, there's a lot of failure in life. You can lose multiple times, but the people that succeed, today I was with one of the most famous and wealthiest men in America. He runs a billion-dollar investment firm. His name is Dalio. And he talked about his multiple failures, how often he failed. But that's when he learned, and you have the most growth. And so pick yourself up, just like they made me keep doing it again. And before you know it, you could be running for office, and you could be speaking for those that can't speak for themselves.
That's excellent advice, because when you do speak, who's nervous about speaking in front of a large group? A lot of you, right? So one of the things that I did when I first started speaking, because I was nervous just like you, is that someone told me this: when you look at a person, look at their forehead, do not look them in the eye. Because when you look people in the eye, you all of a sudden get focused and they're making a face at you or something that distracts you, or if they're frowning. If you look at their forehead, they think you're looking at them, but you're really not. And you can stay focused on what you're saying. So that helped me a lot. There are little things like that you can do to help you get through your nervousness. And it's going to take you a while, right, before you feel comfortable talking about your topic, your material. And the other thing is always do your homework. Know what you're saying. Don't make things up because it sounds good. Okay, so the next question, actually, I'm going to go to, is it okay if I go to some of the questions the kids asked?
Yeah, we can do more
Yeah.
Q&A. We can do more Q&A too.
We'll do a little Q&A. And one of the things I heard a couple of times was, who inspired you then, and who inspires you today? Amy?
When I was young, my mom was a very big inspiration. It's probably a pretty popular answer, I would think, but she always encouraged me to stay active, to stay present. But one of the best pieces of advice that she ever gave to me was to be true to myself. And that inspiration, that has stayed with me, those inspirational words, because no matter what it is you do, whether you go into political office or you become a teacher or whatever it is that you become, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to try and give you all the advice that they have. They're going to be trying to tell you what worked for them, and I'm sure it did, and it's a wonderful thing. It's important to take that information, but it is very, very important to remember who you are and to understand that you don't have to fit into any mold and you don't have to be like anybody else. So those words from my mom have stayed
And
with me.
who today?
Today, Rudy, you.
Oh.
But I'm being silly, but I actually mean that it is the people who have put themselves out there, and it's a variety of people. People who put themselves out there and risked a lot to be able to stand up and advocate for others. And anytime I see that, those are the people that inspire me. And often they are third graders on a playground who stand up for somebody, or walk up to somebody on the buddy bench who's sitting there quietly by themselves. Or they're the moms who bring their daughters to something like this, the parents who get their children involved and things like that. Anybody who's willing to either advocate or teach, advocacy to me is an inspiration.
Thank you. Tara?
Basically my entire family, but more specifically my brother. He's 4 years older than me, and he kind of introduced me to literally every single thing I'm interested in. From the time I was in middle school, he was like, "You're gonna do mock trial in high school." And I used to read his like opening statement speeches. There were these like 5-minute long speeches about what a case is about. And I was just rehearsing those. For no particular reason, I would read them in different accents and everything. And then when I got to high school, I decided to try out for the team, and now I'm the captain. So it's played like a huge role in my life, and it's provided me with a lot of like support in terms of like the community I'm part of and the kids who I like interact with on like a daily basis and during practice. And they've all had some very like niche passions about what they're into, and I've kind of realized that it's okay, as Ms. Berger-Javala said, like to not conform and to like be who you are and not be afraid to be different from someone. And so like I did that. I was like, I'm into this education Supreme Court case, and I'm gonna follow it until it's decided upon. And then when it's decided upon, I'm gonna do something about it. So that was really important to me. And also, my parents have kind of also let me kind of figure out my own path. So like having the freedom to do that and not have to follow a certain set of expectations was really important to me as well. And it's kind of led me to what I want to study now and like the person I am today.
Thank you. Tony?
Well, when I was little, it had to be my dad because he was the strongest person in our family, and he wouldn't treat me like a girl. He had a boy and a girl. He treated us both like young men and forced me to be strong and not give up and work extremely hard by example. And my brother, who was so smart, but he would never help me, and I kept asking for help because he was just so smart. He just kept giving me a book. Every time I had a question, he gave me a book and made me read it. So that was actually at the end proved to be the right thing to do. And then most recently, there are two very special women, both governors. One was a Democrat, Ella Grasso. She was our first female governor, and more recently, a Republican, Governor Jody Rell. And what was great about Ella Grasso was she was a short Italian woman like me, and she was gutsy and feisty like me. And then Jody Rell, who had such grace and dignity and ethics. She was known for being so ethical, so she was really an inspiration.
Yes, thank you. And we have a few minutes, maybe a minute or two left. Is it okay, one more?
Sure, yeah.
Your favorite quote, real quick.
It's not a famous person. It's actually from a mom, a fellow mom.
Okay.
And she says it to me over and over again when I get down in the mud. She says it to my kids, and she says it to anyone who will listen. Life is a series of choices. And she's absolutely right.
Tara?
My favorite quote is by a writer named Joan Didion, and she said that self-respect has nothing to do with the approval of others. So basically, it doesn't matter what someone else thinks of you. If you respect yourself, that's all that matters.
Excellent. Tony?
People don't care what you know unless they know that you care.
That's excellent. Do we want to go to some questions, or we move along?
Yeah, well, let's see, we want to have time, so we're going to do the vision board.
Okay.
So we can maybe take a couple questions. Does anybody have a question that they want to ask, any other questions they want to ask the panel? Are you guys good? Oh, you're not as
Right
talkative
there.
today.
You always have
Okay.
a question.
Okay. All right, Jules? Oh, you have a question too, Catherine? All right, so Jules and Catherine, we'll give you guys the opportunity. So quick questions, quick answers.
Your
then we go to the
name,
vision board.
project it out,
Yep, tell us your name.
and
even
enunciate
if I
your
give it away.
question.
Well, I'm Jules, and this question is really for anyone up on the panel. Like, not what, like, I don't know how to say it. Like,
It's okay, just say it.
well, I don't know how to say it.
Okay.
Like, how, like, I know we already went over this, but it's like a different, like, how did you get where you were today? Like, kind of like, how did what inspire you in what way, I guess?
So how did we all end up where we're at?
Yeah,
Is that the question?
yeah.
So we can, you want the candidates to answer? No? You asking me? No, you just,
I'm just asking.
yeah.
How'd you get where you are today? All right, so what?
Hard work,
Yeah.
everyone.
Hard work, yeah.
Everyone here is we have a common denominator. We work very hard. And we're interested in serving people and helping others. Every single person here. And you have to have others in mind at all times. And another thing that's really important is compassion. You have to have compassion. We live in a very competitive world today, where your teachers want you to do better, your parents want you to do better, they want you to do better on the soccer field, on the field hockey, wherever, whatever sport you play, work, AP classes, etc. But in all of that, compassion is more important. Do you know what compassion means? It's different than empathy is where you feel sorry for them. And if they're in a hole, you get down there in the hole with them, you get next to them when your friends are depressed. Compassion is when you put a ladder down into the hole to help them get up out of the hole. That's compassion. And that's what each and every one of you need to remember. Be compassionate, help people. And that's what everyone here has, is a lot of compassion.
That is a really nice way to wrap up a really great panel. Thank you, Mr. Marconi, and we have a thank you for everybody. Let's start with Mr. Marconi. Thank you very much for coming. So I don't know if you guys know this. Some of you might, and some of you might not. But when we had the idea for this program, which was 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago today. It was actually November 9th, 2016, day after the election. And the very first person, who do you think is the very first person that you would go to if you want to start a program like this? Who would you go to? Go ahead, Catherine, since you didn't get to ask your question. Go ahead. Rudy Marconi. You go to your first selectman, you go to the head of the town, and you say, head of the town, I would like all of the girls in our town to aspire to be a leader in their community like you. Can you please recognize these girls who are going to run for president? And congratulate them, recognize them, and give them a chance to walk around with you at some of the events that you do. And Mr. Marconi immediately said, Liz, when can we meet? And he opened up his calendar, and we found a date, and it would just went running from there. We had Tony Boucher on our advisory committee, and several under Pam Miles on our advisory committee. Where is Michelle Booth still here? Mimi Anglade? Okay. But anyway, so we got a lot of people involved, and everybody said yes, and. So yes, what else can I do? But Mr. Marconi has really been one of the more pivotal leaders in the whole program. So many thanks to Mr. Marconi for all that you've done. And, thank you. Go ahead, Chesley.
I want to recognize Hersha. Are you going to do that?
Oh, that's right. So,
on
Hersha.
Veterans Day, Hersha, who is the reigning
Yeah.
Miss President,
Hersha, can you stand up?
gave a speech at Veterans Day at the Lounsbury House. Hersha, an excellent speech. She was quoted in Hamlet Hub, in the paper.
All right, congratulations, Hersha. I didn't even know about that myself. That's fantastic. And Mimi Anglade just walked back in. She's another member of our board. That's Mimi Anglade. She started the junior board. Okay, so other thank yous. Tony Boucher and Tara Krishna, thank you very much. You have been instrumental in the program throughout. We can't thank you enough for all you've done. And Amy Berger-Drabalo, for new presenters, we always offer our swag. So thank you. Tara and Ms. Boucher already have our swag, so yeah. Anyway, thank you very much. We're now gonna do a vision board.